This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted to be joined by former WBO middleweight champion of the world turned trainer of world champions, Mr. Andy Lee. We're here in Manchester. It's the Joseph Parker-Chisora 2 fight week. Now all of that's out of the way. Andy, how you doing?
Fine, Rob. Thank you for coming up to my room, setting up your camera, making me look good with the slide in. Yeah, good.
Yeah, we were just saying off screen, this is preparing you for your next career transition into Hollywood. Like leading man there, I was saying to you, I think maybe some sort of Peaky Blinders future lies ahead for you once you get bored of this boxing lark.
Yeah. Remember at the garden? It was you. It was you. Yeah. I did that monologue once, a long time ago.
Another life ago. Right, before we go anywhere, I mentioned the fact there that you were former WBO middleweight champion of the world. There was a little anniversary this week. A certain 7 years since a certain Andy Lee went back over stateside and shook up the world against Matt Korobov. 7 years later, is it still as sweet as it was?
Yeah, I had not one for anniversary. Someone sent it to me, but it was a great little video, and I'm trying to build up my social media numbers, so I had to post it. But yeah, there's always this this melancholy anyway, so we're anniversaries is always like an air of regrettability about it. You know, time has passed and you never get it back. And you can't go back. But yeah, it's great memories. But I don't like to live in the past, and it's time to make new memories.
Absolutely, and we're not going to dwell too much on that, but I did share that video trying to help you boost up them Instagram numbers there, and even though my Instagram's private, but that's not important. So, life as a trainer. Joseph Parker, we're here again. Fights Derek Chisora in the rematch. Just want to touch on something that you said in the immediate aftermath of the fight and as well today at the press conference, that you felt at the time Derek may have been the one who was given the decision in the ring on the night. You've since gone back and watched the fight again. You felt Joe rightfully got the decision. Just explain that, what you were feeling on the night and what you saw differently when you went back and had a look.
Yeah, I think I was disappointed in Joe's performance. And so I guess I felt Chisora performed better, he had his way in the fight. We didn't have our way in the fight. So I think that's where that came from, was that I was disappointed, and I felt well done Chisora. He fought a good fight, got the knockdown, and I felt we're in his hometown, so as soon as the bell rang I said, I'm not sure, Joe. I'm not sure if we've won this. As a trainer, I think it's always good to err on that side anyway, and I'd probably do naturally. So if you're not dominating, or if a round is close, then it's good to assume you haven't won it. And I said it to Chisora, but I watched it back, and Joe came on strong well at the end of the fight, and that he's maybe we hadn't had the few weeks together, so it was probably a bit naive of me to think that he would pick up and be able to change his style. But within those few weeks together, he was conditioning. We worked a lot on his conditioning, and that's what won him the fight. He had the gas going down the stretch.
It's one of the things that's kind of popped up and been spoke about is obviously the short time that you had to work together, as well as Derek with Buddy McGirt and now Dave Coldwell. You know, he's obviously trained with Dave previously, somebody that you know very well. What have you been able to implement this time? I mean, you mentioned that kind of working on his conditioning and that kind of getting him over the line. I'm assuming now you've had a lot more time to work on the nitty-gritty and the technical aspects of what Joe's been doing. Yeah,
from what my assessment of Joe before we started training him, and my assessment of the fight was exactly, under stress you would revert to type, and that's what he did. And he would do, there'd be rounds where he'd do something really, really good in the fight, and then he'd just step back and try to recoup, take a mental break in concentration, and a physical break. And he gave Chisora way with too much momentum, and gave Chisora all the encouragement to come forward. So we've been working on sustaining his attacks, presenting when he's in front of Chisora, posturing, and his posture and the way he presents to Chisora is that he's ready to engage and ready to punch, so that Chisora will be less likely to come steaming in. We've worked on a lot of the similar combinations that will work against Chisora. That's just the technical side, but it's more mental with Joe. It's more about him, sustaining these attacks, being consistent with his attacks and with his, not taking those breaks. He's got to be concentrated for every second of the round. So like to do that to get him to be able to do that before he started sparring, we would do a lot of sessions where he would do, like when Joe shadowboxes now, he shadowboxes. It's not just a part of his warm, it's part of his workout, and he's shadowboxing is realistic shadowboxing, and so he'd do 4 or 5 rounds of shadowboxing, then he hit the bag 4 or 5 rounds. So, but not just hitting the bag and tapping away, punching and working and drilling on everything that we're working on in terms of staying ready, not taking breaks, not there's all like I recognize like all these little not ticks, but things that show me he's taking a break, like little walks, lazy walks, or touching his nose, or just little touching his things that I've been watching him on the bag, drilling him. No, stop. Again, you did it again, and he'll then he started to recognize it himself, and so we ironed it out. So he'd do all that work and be near exhausted, and then we would go in the ring and do pads, and then he had to perform and be focused and concentrated and not take those breaks. So that's what we did, and then in the sparring, there was very little. He didn't do. There was very little. He did that very little. There was very little displays of that type of thing in terms of the breaks. But it was just the odd time reminded him. And look, you don't know, you never know. I've done all I can to get him there, to get him right. He's in great physical shape, so the fitness is not a worry. And seems to be in a great place mentally too. But you never know. Boxing's the most unpredictable sport in the world. We've seen it how much more so than any in recent times. And even in the last fight we had a good game plan, but he gets dropped with the first punch. It can always happen. So heavyweight boxing as well. So we'll see. He's in great place all around, and he just has to replicate his gym form in the ring.
You mentioned that. I was going to come on to that, being dropped so early in the fight first time around. Obviously never a great time to be dropped in a fight, but certainly not in the first 30 seconds of the fight as happened last time. How important is it that Joe has a better start than last time, obviously, but doesn't necessarily allow Derek to build up that head of steam that he's so known for over the years?
Yeah, obviously it's paramount that he doesn't get dropped at any time. But it's probably not the worst time to get dropped because you have time to recover and build up at the points again. But as when I was in the corner, you have to be conscious that the fighter's been hurt. He's still trying to get his legs about him. So you have to be, you can't be going telling him to go out. You have to find out, judge him yourself as well on what he looks. So you can't be telling him to go back straight out into the fight. You have to kind of manage him being hurt and then also wanting to win the rounds. But yeah, he has to be on. He has to be focused and he has to, in the moment and present. That's how I'll describe it.
Now, this is something that I ask you probably every 6 months or so that we get together, certainly since you retired from fighting yourself. And being Andy Lee and being the type of man you are, you never really give yourself much credit. I think it's probably the way that I'm looking at it. How do you feel that you're developing now as a coach? You've had Joseph Parker, obviously, for the first fight. You've had Paddy, who's at a completely different stage of his career. You've been part of the training team for Tyson Fury. You've got people in and out of the gym. Isaac Lowe being another one. How do you feel that you've developed and progressed as a trainer in certainly the last 12 to 18 months?
I think I don't know. I think I improved the fighters, but the only measure as a coach is the results, and you live by your results as a coach. So they speak for themselves. If Joseph has a good win, then I'll be a great coach. But it's just bandied around too much that word. Great coaches have success kind of consistently over years, and they don't just do it with fighters who've been champions before. They do it with kids who they start from scratch and build into great fighters. So look, it's only early doors for me yet, so I gotta keep working and keep trying to improve myself as a coach as the fighters improve.
Now, it's no secret that you trained alongside some great fighters. You trained in some of the busiest gyms around the world in world boxing, particularly obviously the Kronk gym, the kind of the famous one that's obviously associated with yourself. How important is it and how beneficial is it for Joseph Parker and also your Paddy Donovans, your Isaac Lowe's, to have your Tyson Furies in the camp, Joseph Parker in the camp, David Nika, somebody else who's been kind of introduced and over the last 6 months or so. How much does that give a fighter of all different levels, having those types of pros in a gym?
Yeah, I think they feed off each other, and you will always learn more from your examples than you will ever learn from me telling you. You know, if you can see it in practice. And we have these, mirror neurons in our brain that when you're looking at something for long enough, you'll almost imitate it. So, but these guys are so fortunate, and in some ways they've probably been spoiled of it. The fact that we can go to Morecambe and have the type of access we have to Tyson Fury, and not just like for the way he trains, the way he pushes himself with no fight scheduled. He's training harder than any of them. The way he thinks about boxing, how he pushes himself mentally, it's like even for me as for all that I know about boxing, or think I know or experienced, Tyson is a great asset to me as well. The fact that he shares, he's brutally honest as well, and he'll share his opinion and we'll debate stuff, and we agree sometimes and sometimes we don't agree, but I value his opinion very, very highly. And we're very fortunate. Yeah, very lucky to have this relationship. Him and Joe, he's been a great asset to Joe, and all these other kids who can come into the gym because they know me and they know Joe. They can come in. So, yeah, we're grateful for Tyson for all, and not just on the practical terms, letting us use his gym and giving us access to everything else. So, yeah.
Was that something? I mean, you've known Tyson for many, many years. Was that something that's always been in him? Was that something that you could envision him being all of these years later in the fighter that he's grown to become?
No. When he was younger, he was just happy-go-lucky, and a bit up and down with his emotions as well. And but just how he thinks about boxing and how not just the technical side, but also the mental side of it, and how he can break people down. Mental warfare and stuff. He's unique. He's special. There's not going to be another one like him. He's the product of his environment, and he's the breeding in him. Both sides of his family of all fighting people, and it's like all of those genes have been mixed together to breed this superhuman who's just like a natural born fighter, and how he's evolved over the years from being this fancy Dan slickster to now being an absolute, beast of a fighter, and he's only getting better, and it's going to be very hard to see him lose. Not with what's out there. I think you could put probably some of the best in history up against him, and it'd be very hard to beat him.
You obviously weren't able to get out for the trilogy bout. The first question I have is, what was it like having to watch that from home, considering the topsy-turvy nature of the fight? I mean, it was a brilliant fight. I can't imagine how you were feeling. I mean, I was jumping up and down at home, but for you, somebody who's so close to Tyson over the years and not being there on the night, what were your emotions at the time?
I actually was commentating that night in Liverpool on the Fowler-Smith fight.
Oh, yeah.
And they said they'll have it in the ballroom downstairs on the big screen. And I was debating whether I go down. I did set my alarm for 4 a.m. and then will I go down or not? So I went down and watched it. And even though he was dropped heavy, I was like, oh, there was never a doubt in my mind. I knew what he was capable of. And he only got dropped because he got too comfortable in round 2. And but he got back up, and I knew he was going to win. There was no doubt in my mind that he was going to lose. Even when they were rocking each other and going back and forth, I just had that much faith in him.
What was it like for you? I mean, obviously he had to come back. He had, thankfully, the problems with his newborn daughter seemingly okay, and she's in much better health now, which is obviously great, but not ideal when you're going into a fight of that magnitude for that to happen a few weeks prior. How much did that affect him and his performance on the night, do you think?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure what I can say, but Tyson had a lot of. I don't want to say. Listen, it's not for me to say. he had injuries. I think his dad had said it, and there was other things going on. And I don't know if he was in the best of form in training. And then we all got COVID as well in July. We all were all ruined with COVID when we were preparing for the first fight. For the fight that was eventually rescheduled to October. But to go that's just a testament to him. To come home and have a child born premature and to be in the hospital with her and to do a few weeks in Morecambe with Sugar and the lads, Jordan Thompson, David Adelaide and George Fox, then just to go over there and wake up on the... I was in touch with him nearly every day while he was in America, and I don't think the form was great. But to get up and you have seen the video and spoke to, and the morning of the fight, he was like a different man, like jumping out of his skin, ready to fight. And that's just, that's why he's so special. He's unbelievable. Like, to go from being that, as I described, fancy dance slickster, and then in one fight to change his style completely to becoming this dominant fighter with only 8 weeks with Sugar. And you could see it, and Sugar did a great job in the corner. Sugar did an unbelievable job, it really was good stuff. Some grandstand stuff, really hamming it up. So great job by them both, by everybody.
Yeah, he did a fantastic job in the corner. The big dogs pull it out late, I believe, and that's one of the lines that will always stick with me. And it was, it's such an easy comparison to make, but it's easy for an obvious reason. Shades of your old trainer, mentor, Emanuel Steward in there.
Yeah, just the tone of voice and the urgency, and just the want to get the knockout, because you never know, and especially you never know what you leave with a guy hanging around too long, and he comes back to haunt you. So yeah, the big dog came on strong.
And we've spoken about it in the past, and I appreciate it. So it can often be a difficult thing to put yourself in somebody else's head, but as you knew Emanuel so well, and we all have seen the famous video all of them years ago about him talking about Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury in the future. 2 questions, really. What does that say about Emanuel? And 2, do you think he really thought he would be the fighter that he's turned out today? You've said yourself that you kind of sort of surprised and didn't expect him to develop to the degree that he has. But what do you think that says about Emanuel all of those years ago?
Yeah, there's, Samuel Peters used to call him the Wizard Man. The Wizard Man. That's what he used to call him. And he is, and there's things to this day coming true, things that he said, and predicted. And, it's good that he singled those 2 out, and they were the 2 that made it. But he would, I think he really did want to train Tyson, but he had Vladimir, and he was conflicted with Vladimir, and him and Vladimir were very close. But he knew, he could see it in Tyson. He could identify straight away, talent. And what he says in that video is true. It's not just talent, it's a mental toughness and a confidence, arrogance or ego, what he said. And yeah, he could see it straight away.
Out of all of the fighters, you mentioned there about the people who are out there now, but not just them, but fighters over years gone by. Out of all of them, who would you pick to be in the other side of the corner? I say remove yourself from the equation, and who would you pick for the best fight? Tyson Fury versus who from history?
Oh, from history. That's hard. That's tough one. Tough one. Like, you look at I don't know. When Tyson was the fancy dance slicer, him and Muhammad Ali obviously was the one, isn't it? Just to see who was quicker and who was faster, who had the most tricks and who would talk the most. But now that he's actually a bulldozer, some great fights like with Larry Holmes would be a great fight, or Riddick Bowe would be a great fight. Lennox Lewis, yeah. Lennox Lewis doesn't get enough credit. He was, I don't know, just doesn't get enough credit. He's probably one of the all-time greatest heavyweights of all time. Yeah, so yeah, Tyson and Lennox would be an unbelievable fight, wouldn't it? Lennox can punch and it was mean as well. Had all those attributes that Emanuel spoke about. Talent, skill, but also attitude and ego. You'd
have Lennox Lewis and Emanuel Steward in one corner, Tyson Fury and Andy Lee in the other corner. That might be okay. Sugar Hill, but you can be in there as well, Andy.
I probably have to be with Emanuel because we were too quiet. No. Yeah, Tyson Fury. Yeah, he's the man.
It's interesting you said that about Lennox. I actually interviewed Lennox a few years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago. I think it might have been actually before the first Wilder fight. And I said to him, out of all of those heavyweights, Wilder, Joshua, Fury, because Lennox very coy and he doesn't want to be drawn into stuff. So I said, I'm not going to ask which one's the best, but which one do you think would have been the most difficult fight for you? And he said Tyson, because of his awkwardness, his size. He feels like it would have taken him a few rounds at least to work him out, which I can sort of see because of Tyson's versatility and his sheer size.
And speed at that time as well. Speed.
Okay, moving on from, yesteryear, I guess we've kind of just danced about there with Tyson. What's next for him? Obviously, the world is waiting to see what happens with the heavyweight division, as it often has been for the last 2 or 3 years. Dillian Whyte, does that look the most likely, do you think?
Honestly, I have no idea. You probably know more than me. And I have no involvement on that side of Tyson's boxing. But if it is, it's a good fight. Dillian Whyte's earned his shot. He's a good fighter. And a threat. If you, as I said, heavyweight boxing, you can't take anybody lightly, and he'll be more motivated for this fight than any other. So, although Tyson's a heavy favourite, he'll have to be on his game to beat Dillian Whyte.
The other fight, of course, that people are talking about is Alexander Usyk. Before we talk about Tyson Fury, so Alexander Usyk, I haven't spoke to you about Alexander Usyk's performance, brilliant performance, in dethroning Anthony Joshua at Tottenham Stadium. Just your thoughts on his performance that night?
Yeah, it was probably easier than he anticipated. Good performance, great feints, great technical performance. Managed his energies as well and negotiated, managed to fight well. And yeah, it was, listen, it's all been said, hasn't it? His feints were so effective. And with the rematch, if that's to happen, it'll be a massive. If Joshua can win the rematch, it'll be an unbelievable performance, won't it? It'll be some turnaround, and it's not beyond him, but he has to fight a different fight. And but Usyk will be so confident, after that first fight, the fear will be gone, and he'll have seen even more ways where he can improve himself versus Joshua. So it's so interesting, isn't it, and exciting, and it's great to have this in boxing, isn't it? And we're in this unbelievable time in boxing, isn't it? To have all these fights happen, and it's great to be part of it.
People have seen, obviously we've seen Anthony Joshua on kind of his American tour and kind of the phrases that have been bandied around. He needs an American trainer. And Emanuel Steward, somebody who obviously had big fighters, big heavyweights, box like big men, skill, punching power and what have you. Would you agree with that? Obviously, I know that you're not the type to kind of suggest things and be disrespectful to his current setup and stuff, but in order to implement those changes, is that what he needs to do? Does he need to go to a coach to make him kind of utilise his physical assets against Alexander Usyk?
I would, it's not just, there'll never be another Emanuel Steward. Yeah, Emanuel Steward would have been the perfect coach for him. Yeah, but there's not another one of him around. There never will be. And I said on another channel that he should go to Adam Booth. I still think that if he's going to try out the trainers, there's nothing wrong with Rob McCracken's great trainer, great success. But I think he needs to declutter a little bit in terms of his team and people who have voices within the team. But that's what it just seems from there. I don't know what it's really like. I'm just looking from the outside, and I don't take a whole lot of interest, to be honest. But I think Rob McCracken's a great coach. His record speaks for himself. What he's done with all the fighters from Froch to Team GB and Joshua up to this point. Adam Booth, how highly I rate him and what I think about him. But I don't know if it'll ever happen. I don't know what will happen. But listen, it's a big thing to change trainer, isn't it? It's a big decision. Sometimes not always for the best. It's not.
You changed trainers, obviously, after Emanuel sadly passed away or became very ill. Were there ever any moments in your time with Emanuel that you explored the idea of potentially going elsewhere?
No. What are you going to do? And there was a time when I was living in New York, and I trained with Joey Gamache, who was Emanuel's assistant, so that was kind of a continuity. But everything outside of Emanuel was a step down, and that's no disrespect to any coach out there, but where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? You know what I mean? So I've been very fortunate, you know, from all of the coaches I work with, from Adam to Joey Camash, Sugar Hill, Emanuel, and even as an amateur with Billy Walsh, who's done great things with Team USA, Zara Antia, who's had 2 gold medalists for a country like Ireland, and I don't know how many silvers and bronze. From the Repton Boxing Club to the St. Francis Boxing Club. Great education in boxing, yeah.
Final one on Mr. Fury. Is the Usyk fight the most difficult fight, do you think? I mean, we've seen Tyson in the past talk about the Steve Cunningham fight in particular and kind of that zippy, zigzaggy, smaller guy zipping around him. I think he spoke about it on the Joe Rogan podcast. Do you feel that that's the trickiest fight for Tyson?
Yeah, but you just look how that fight ended when Tyson changed up, and I could see him doing that. Similar approach to Usyk. Usyk's a great fighter. Unbelievable. But I would think Tyson's strategy would be just to go in and ragdoll him, grab him, lean on him, fight him, punch him on the inside, hit him on the hips and shoulders, and listen, after 4 or 5 rounds, it'd be tough for any man to stand up after that. And then Tyson will go to work. So I think that's what Tyson would do. But yeah, it is the most interesting fight. But people want to see Tyson Fury versus Anthony Joshua, and in an ideal world, Joshua will win the rematch, and then him and Tyson can get it on. That's what I would like to see.
Okay, moving away from all the heavyweight talk, want to speak to you about Jason Quigley. Again, somebody that you've known very, very for a long time. I saw the photo that you shared on your now growing Instagram page. Everybody, please follow Andy Lee across social media.
At Body Puncher.
There we go. Free plug for Andy Lee anytime on Boxing Social. But no, in all seriousness, Jay obviously had a bit of an up and down time as a pro in particular after enjoying enormous success as an amateur. Boxed Demetrius Andrade, very good world champion, and unfortunately came up short. Your thoughts on his performance and that night for him?
Tough night. Probably went as bad as it could have possibly have gone. Didn't get a chance to show anything, and he's hugely disappointed by it. But when I was thinking about it, he went to America to fight one of the most avoided fighters out there that nobody wants to fight. Gets dropped in the first round and gets his jaw broke with that punch in 2 places, and did it all without having his trainer there. There's reasons for for why it went the way it did, and me not being there was a big part of it. I feel hugely not guilty, or feel like I let him down. It was out of my control, but felt terrible that I wasn't there, and watching it. Even though he got dropped in the first round, I wasn't aware his jaw was broke, but I thought that's okay. We know Andrade starts fast. He dropped out. I think he dropped every opponent for the last 5 or 6 fights in the first round. And I thought, okay, it's okay, you'll grow into this, And he was starting to, but then he got hurt again. And the fight was over before he got warmed up. So that's tough, isn't it? That's boxing for you. And Andrade was a sensational, looked great that night. And Jason's hugely disappointed, and insult to injury, having your jaw broke, having to fly back, get MRI, go to the hospital that night, get CT scans, and fly back home, go straight to hospital, and spending time in the hospital getting his jaw plates put in his jaw. Then he's home for a month now and hasn't been able to eat. He's just started eating food. It's tough, but that's boxing, That's boxing. He stood up against one of the best in the world, and it didn't go his way. But he'll come again. He'll come again, and I'm sure he would have learned a lot from that fight. It's tough, but he would have learned a lot. Tough lesson to learn. And there's still huge fights out there for him, And I don't want to say any names, but I can vision or foresee, plot a way back for him.
Elsewhere in your ever-expanding stable, it seems like every time I speak to you, you've got a fighter here or there or somebody coming here. Young Paddy Donovan, haven't seen the real deal in a little while. How's he getting on?
He's doing okay. He last fought in August, had a first-round knockout, but since then hurt his hand in sparring. He was due to have big end to the year. He's supposed to fight October 30th in New York, and then on the Josh Taylor Catterall card was supposed to be December. Paddy had his hand before the fight in October, and then the Catterall fight got cancelled. So he's down to fight on the Catterall Taylor undercard. His hand's healing, his back punching. So it's been frustrating for him. But Top Rank are excited about him. They have big plans for him. Like they've gotten him a P1 visa now, so he's going to be fighting in America next year as well. And he's the real deal. That's his nickname, and like he's out of all the fighters that train, he's by far the most exciting with the most potential. Punches too hard. That's why he's getting his hands. He's knocking guys out in the gym with big gloves on and headgears, and he's leaving them shaking on the floor. Like it's the kid's scary with his power, speed, and reflexes. So we'll get back, have the Christmas, and then we'll go to work in January, train and prepare for a fight, and hopefully he stays injury free, and people will see a lot more of him.
We were sort of talking about earlier, coaches are judged on their results, and you mentioned about improving fighters. Ultimately, in your mind at least, is that your big project, your big test, is ultimately where you're going to judge yourself on, but something similar to that with how you deal with Paddy? Obviously, you've known him since he was an amateur, since he was very young, taking him as a pro. Is that where we're going to kind of see what you're all about, I guess, Andy, is what I'm trying to say? Yeah,
but with Paddy, there's not that there's always room for improvement, but he's like even now, like there's like he's so good, you know what I mean? And to improve, like where if you got someone who's completely raw or has a lot of flaws, you can easily adjust them and make them better. Paddy is a high level at right now, so it's kind of not that I can't see ways to he can improve, but they'd be hard to notice from what as well as train him, manage him, and guide him in the right way. And it's unfortunate that he's had his hand injuries because he hasn't been able to be part of these camps, which would be great time for him. So even though he's probably my most valued asset as a boxer, he's one I've not had time to invest a lot in recently. But we'll start the new year fresh and get to work.
Okay, final question, final fighter I'd like to talk to you about is somebody who I spoke to today for the very first time, not on camera, off camera. Hopefully I'll catch up with him very soon. We spoke about him many months ago, David Nika of New Zealand, got himself a bronze medal in the Olympics, lost to Muslim Ghazi Magomedov, who's, I think, was unbeaten for 4 years before then, so no disgrace in that. I spoke to him today, and all he could talk to me about was how disappointed he was not to get the gold, which I think is nice to see from somebody there. What have you made about having him in the gym?
He's been the first time meeting him, and I was aware of him. I got a message from Billy Walsh, who's trained the USA team, and said, you should have a look at this kid. He could be something special. So that's when I was aware of him. Joseph was very high on him, and then he came over with Joe and was fighting on the undercard on Saturday. And he's an extremely talented fighter, lovely young man. Very much ingrained in the amateur style, so it's going to take not a lot of work, but it's going to be a long term project, and but he has the mentality and the mindset to be, that champion, like to want to go to come from a country like New Zealand where there's basically no amateur program. He's been training himself for all these years and funding himself. He's trained with the GB team, flew over here by himself to train with them. He's been out to America. So to come from a country like that and to get a medal at the Olympics at 91 kg, which is tough, tough. Shows you enough about him, how talented he is. And listen, we're going to keep working and he can keep improving, and it take time. Take time because he's got that not the amateur style, but it take time before he finds his feet in the pro world.
Okay, well, Andy, I've taken up enough of your time. And as much as it's nice to look at you with this beautiful lighting, there he goes. Look at him go. I will leave you to it, but I'm going to give you the floor. I'm going to put you on the spot, which is not something that I know that you like me doing in these interviews. But if possible, because I think everybody watching this interview, and myself certainly, we love to hear the old Emanuel Steward stories. We love it. Yeah. So, have you got one for me, Andy? I know I'm putting you on the spot, so I don't need it immediately.
Go I got a million stories. I just need to be triggered by some sort of question or reference. But I'm all like, so Manuel's like more than a coach to me, and like even like when I was cooking for Joseph and this and that up in Morecambe, and thinking about how he used to cook and all of that stuff, and yeah, one time we were in. Listen, what Emanuel had his own ego, and one time we were in LA, we went to Golden Boy's head offices and we had a meeting there, and all the people working on the floor stuff, like the janitors and that, they were Mexican, as is over there, and they're all getting photos with Emanuel. I said, Emanuel, you see, all the Mexicans, they love you, that was a compliment, like they all know you, Emanuel, but I didn't realize that he'd kind of like, everybody knows me, not just the Mexicans, so. We were walking out, and like he couldn't have timed it better. He was a bit peeved by that. I didn't realize. So we were walking along, and this car drives by, a convertible car, top was down, with these two women inside, and they start going, Emanuel, hi! And I was like, oh, and he just, see, I told you, everybody knows me, not just the Mexicans. And I was like, oh, okay. So that was a funny. That was a great start. That was a great time. We used to have some great times traveling around everywhere and hanging out.
Okay, well, sorry for putting you on the spot. If anybody else wants to see or read rather some Emanuel Steward stories, check out Fighter by Andy Lee. Or he wants another one.
Well, I'll tell you just like how Emanuel thought. Like we were training in Mallorca, where Vladimir used to train. And we had his gym set up, and the room was quite small, and the ring was in the gym. He had this ring. And in Vladimir's contract, the ring that he trains in had to be the same size as the ring he fought in. So when we were there, the last day before we left, Emanuel's got a bit of boxing hand tape and asked me to get one side, and he got one side, and he walked from one side of the ring to the other. And I folded it over so it didn't stick. And I said, why are you doing that? I said, I just want it for myself, and put it in his bag. And so then we get to the fight week, and Vladimir's fighting Chris Bird, and Don King's with Chris Bird, and we're in the restaurant, me and Emanuel, and Baron Bunty comes over, big commotion. Manuel, we need your help, we can't do nothing with Don King, he won't change the ring size. And I said, well, what's the problem? He said, come, Emanuel, you have to come deal with it, because Emanuel had a way, he could deal with, had the relationship with Don King and everything. Can you please come to the arena? So we went to the arena. And, look, this ring is too small, that Vladimir and Vitaly and Baron, this ring is too small. And Emanuel said, no, 1 second. And he got out his tape, and he walked from one side of the ring to the other. He said, this is exactly the ring you've been training in. None of them measured the ring, but just because it was in a big arena, it looked tiny compared to the small room. And then the dispute was settled. So that's how he was thinking, even very far ahead in advance.
Well, thanks very much for sharing that one with us, Andy. And as I just mentioned, and I'll repeat it again, check out Fighter by Andy Lee. Available now on Amazon and any good bookstore. Any boxing fan should give that a read. Andy, always a real pleasure catching up with you. Thanks so much for speaking to Boxing Social, not just today, but in the past. I'm sure I will catch up with you soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good.